Welcome back to the Retail Initiative podcast. I know that I say all the time when I have guests that I'm really excited about this episode and you're in for a treat. But y'all, like Meredith, I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Whenever I got your email, you're like, hey, would you want to do this? I'm like, all caps, yes.
Oh my gosh, yes. If you do not know Meredith from Makeup Junkie, you should. Her bags are incredible. You might know her from Shark Tank and her episode there. In fact, Meredith, I don't know if you know this. We met at your Shark Tank party. That was the very first time I think.
When all the hub people kind of came to support, I believe.
Yes. Beth from the Boutique Hub flew in to go to your party and invited me to join. And so I drove all the way up to Conroe, which I live in Houston. So for those listening, that's like an hour-ish from where I was living at the time. Drove up, and then so I got to meet you at your Shark Tank party, which was a ton of fun. But hey, for people that don't know Makeup Junkie, tell us about the brand, what it is and what you sell, because it's a really unique concept. This is a little bit different because you're not the normal retailer that we're talking to on each episode. You're kind of on the vendor side. So share a little bit more about the brand and what it is that you do.
Okay. So it's called Makeup Junkie Bags, which, a lot of people are like, is it just for makeup? Whenever I first developed the bag, the brand, all of it, I was a speech pathologist and I had no branding experience, no business experience. And so MJ, my nickname, my initials. And so I was like, I'm going to call it the Makeup Junkie Bag because I made it for my makeup, not thinking, years later that I would have sold 1 million units, So it's like,
oh my gosh.
So Makeup Junkie Bag is a flat packing, leak resistant travel bag intended to keep my toiletries and cosmetics from spilling, and also intended to store large cosmetics that were difficult. There was no makeup bag on the market keeping up with what cosmetics was doing. So I think that I just made it for personal use, and they say that the best ideas come from solving a problem that you have. And I realized very quickly after posting it on Facebook that a lot of women had the same problem. They're like, wait a second, that holds a contour kit and an eyeshadow palette? I was like, yeah. So, my first month just making them in my home, I had orders for 700 of them, which was outrageous. I was
oh my gosh. That is incredible. And I should note, I spoke at a Boutique Hub event, and their thank you gift was one of your bags.
Yeah.
But it was the men's version, and I've used it for the last 4 years because what I love is all my stuff sits perfectly flat. I'm a dude. There's not near as much in there, and normally I would have to pack and reserve a little section in my suitcase for my toiletry kit, but now it's I can pack and fill the thing to the brim and then just throw that thing on top and shut my suitcase and zip. It's so much better than anything I had ever had before. And so I've personally used one for years using the men's version. So you get this idea and you solve your problem, and then now you've sold 1 million units.
Yes.
What was it? What was that like getting that off the ground at first?
I was working out of my home and sewing and also doing the shipping. I had made a Makeup Junkie at Yahoo or something at that time before I had a domain. And then I was like, I'm selling them through Facebook Messenger, or I would post on Facebook, order at makeupjunkiebags@yahoo.com. And so then I was like, I need a website. What does that entail? So I just kind of Googled, how to build a website. And I tried to do my own website and I failed miserably. And then I Googled who makes websites. So just one foot in front of the other, trying to figure out how to start a business. I filed the LLC in the state of Texas, which I knew I had to have, and kind of did all of those legal things, which are quite simple. They just take time to execute them. And then I would just go purchase fabrics and make a batch of bags and post them online. This was back in the day when you could post everything on Facebook and everybody would see it. Now we have to pay for every little eyeball, that looks at something. So I kind of started Makeup Junkie right during that sweet spot where people who had free business pages on Facebook basically got free advertisement.
Oh, the glory days.
The glory days.
Yeah. And so like in those early days, if you could go back and give yourself a piece of advice, what would you go back and tell yourself then?
I would tell myself to do a little more research before establishing norms in your business. Like, I didn't know anything about how to price a product. So I was making these in my home, and when I was so flattered, the local community was like, we want some. And we were direct to consumer. That's how I started my company. I would sell on the website I had developed the first few months. And so I was like, $18 sounds good. I didn't even know what cost analysis and cost of goods sold. I didn't know what any of that meant. And so I think I missed out on a lot of actually making a profit because I changed my prices like 3 times. Because then when I started actually turning it into a business, I was like, I'm not making any money, but I'm selling a lot of bags. What's going on here? And then I was like, oh, I need to calculate my material and my labor right down to the thread, everything. And, now here we are years later, and we have like a cost analysis team. The minute we design a new product, they calculate the exact cost of that product, which determines our pricing.
Oh my gosh. Yes. And looking back, what are you so glad that you did? Like, because I can look back at my early days in business and be like, man, I was an idiot. But dude, like Josh knew what he was talking about with that. What's something that you're so proud of in those early stages?
I think that I'm very big on details and providing something in a way that's kind of wrapped up in a red bow. You know what I mean? Like, I just made this bag. Well, I'm going to order product tags. I'm going to order tassels. I'm going to kind of dress it up a little bit. And then whenever I would ship it to people, I had branded like dust bags that I would put with every one. Obviously now we don't do that because that would be an outrageous expense. And, I don't know if people would use them, but so just stuff like that. From day one, I tried really hard on the presentation just to make sure, people trusted that I was trying to truly do this and execute it, and they would be proud of what they received.
Yeah. No, I love that. So you get this idea, like you start doing it, you eventually realize like, oh, I need to make money. And this thing grew a ton. So when you went on Shark Tank, like, were you already like kind of rocking and rolling at that point, or did Shark Tank help create some of that?
So Shark Tank definitely helps. However, it should be noted that at the time that I filmed the show, I had already sold over $1 million on my own. And that was, again, I attribute a good chunk of that to, the Facebook glory days where free advertising for everybody, and then also I started doing wholesale, and I found that through the Boutique Hub. I joined as a member, and I was like, I make these little bags and stuff, and it really helped spread my brand awareness. So I think the success that I already had prior to filming the show was fantastic, and that was getting into the wholesale sector, where if a store has 2,000 customers in their database, they're now a megaphone for your brand, And so the more I started wholesaling, the bigger that, our following kind of started to develop. So I would attribute that to some of its success too before the show. Absolutely.
And one of the things that I want to point out, because we're going to get to this part of Meredith's story, because there's like a rebuild side to it, is, and I say this like for the listener, I think sometimes we look at different brands and we're like, they are as successful as they are because they got in at this point and they were able to do X, Y, and Z. And so like, okay, well, Meredith, no one else could be a brand her size because she got in when Facebook was free advertising. I think that the reality is like, if you stripped away any of that early part, you would have found another way. Mm-hmm. So for those listening that are like, okay, well, I didn't get in during those Facebook glory days. It's like, yes, that was an awesome opportunity, but there's other ways to reach and grow today. And I think that all those brands that we look at, outside of a few that are straight up just lucky, which is the minority, the majority of it is like, no, they capitalized on the opportunity that presented itself today. And I'd be willing to bet that there are things in our world right now that 5 years from now, we're going to be like, man, 2024, 2025 was just like the glory days of something. Yeah. And I think that we have to find our way, find that thing and be able to capitalize on it. Okay. So, cause I remember like, gosh, what year was your Shark Tank episode?
That was 19. So we're 5 years ago. we're about to be like right at 5 years. Yeah.
Wait, so yes, oh my gosh, you were rock and rolling, because I actually remember it was the 2018 Boutique Summit with the Boutique Hub, and I remember like you spoke, right? Did you speak?
I spoke. Was that the Dallas one or was that the Atlanta one?
That's Dallas.
Yeah, I spoke there and I had a booth and it went berserk with the boutique owners, and people loved the product. They thought they were cool. And at that time, you know, my business is still pretty young. I was still trying, you know, you're talking like 2 full years into doing it. And I was like, okay, I got more stuff figured out, but I still have to figure out all this. But yeah, that was a fantastic event.
Yes. That's what I'm remembering. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a vendor's booth get like swarmed like yours did at that. Like, when you say berserk, what do you mean?
Like, we had bins behind the sales table of like extra stock. So if the stuff on the table sold, we could put more out. And it was like piranhas, and we had to pull the bins out into the middle of the auditorium, and they were just rifling through them. Like, they were just like digging for treasure. And I remember just standing there, and I was just like, okay, I'm just going to sit back and let them work. And we were checking people out. By the time that we were done checking everybody out, my whole back was drenched in sweat. I was just like, I don't know if it was part of the psychological factor of what is happening, this is fantastic, or because I was just hustling, trying to check all these people out. But what a phenomenal memory, you know? Yes,
that's so fun. And it's so cool to see that like from the outside perspective and just see how much it's grown. And I think that so what I'd love to get into, because I know some of your story, or I know quite a bit of your story, that it hasn't just been this straight like upward climb, right?
Right.
Like what does that look like? Like, because you got this, you grew, you gained traction, you were like all these things were working for you. Then you have Shark Tank, and that obviously comes with an explosion. But like, what then? Like, because it hasn't just been this like easy journey.
Yes, and I love this topic because most business owners learn through a natural trajectory what their normal sales are, what their business really looks like. And early on, I went from Shark Tank in 19, and then we had 2020, you know, that put a weird wrench into everything. And so I went this tidal wave from this TV show into all those boutiques, brick and mortars have to close. And I was like, oh man, like I'm never going to know what my norm really is. So obviously huge success on Shark Tank, but think of it like a tidal wave. That was a fantastic year. We got new followers. We got a lot of beloved customers that still love the brand and buy every print we make. We got all that, but it does come like a tidal wave, and the dust does settle, and then you're like, okay, what does my business really look like? What am I really selling every day? And then, you know, the next year through 2020, you know, we had a lot of, we didn't sell to a lot of online stores, and a lot of my online boutiques now will come and say, you know, I will remember the day that Meredith said, okay, we're finally opening it up to online stores. And so a lot of brick and mortars had to close temporarily, mandated. And so then we started getting into online sellers, and the live sellers were finding success from selling from their homes and their businesses to people that were at home. That was how they were going to shop now for that year.
Yeah.
And so before we discovered that, we kind of, you know, I was looking at sales and I was like, I'm scared. This is not looking too good, you know. So we ended up downsizing from I had 18,000 square feet total, and now we are in just under 7,000 square feet, and it's our perfect Goldilocks facility. But so I did have to make some changes to cut that overhead because the sales were not doing what they did before. You know, I think as a young business owner that had no background in business, after Shark Tank, I was like, let's build it and they will come. We're going to get the big warehouse, and I'm going to hire all these people, and we're going to have our turnaround quick. And then I had this roadblock put in front of me, and I was like, well, darn, you know, grand plans, but 2020, unfortunately, I didn't factor in what was going to happen that year. So definitely went through a period of cutting overhead, trying to get into the online sector for that year, especially. And that was a scary year. I would be lying if I didn't say it was. I was like, is my speech therapy license still good? What's going on here? So I definitely can relate to that fear that a lot of store owners feel, and it comes in waves. One month you're on top of the world, and the next month you're like, am I going to be okay? I think that's a normal feeling for a lot of entrepreneurs. Yeah. And one thing that my mom will always tell you, I have an unshakable faith in myself. I believe if I fall off the horse 9 times, I can get back on 10. Sometimes it takes me longer to figure out how to get back on, but I always find a way. And that perseverance is what can really carry you through whenever you're having a hard time or you see roadblocks in front of you and you're like, am I just going to throw the towel in, or am I going to figure out a way around this sucker, you know?
Yeah. So like when you were going through that, like that belief in yourself, like how did you keep that going? Because I think that's something that so many retailers especially, but really people, I won't even just want to say I think people, when we go through these long, difficult seasons, and I know like that hard season didn't end just at 2020 dip in COVID sales.
That was just like, one hard season, yeah.
Yeah, you had it all hit. So like, what was it that kept you in the game? What was it that kept you from going back to speech therapy and getting excited? I mean, I don't know about you, but like, I want to burn my business down at least like when I'm doing great, like once a month. When I'm not doing great, it's like once a week.
Mm-hmm. I think what kept me going was I love what I get to do. I love my company. I call them my sweet little bags. I love them. I mean, to this day, we've sold over 1 million units. We are just hitting 8 years in business as of January. And every time I get a new fabric and put it on a bag, the same shape bag for the most part, I'm like still as excited as I was when I used to go to the Hobby Lobby and buy fabric. You know, that's another story because I was paying full retail for my materials. And that's another, I don't have any business background we need to talk to, but I think I loved what I did, and that the belief in what you do and having passion for what you do are 2 very important things that some people just don't have. They look up and they're like, I'm not passionate about it. That's a good time to self-reflect and say, is this something I should be doing? And also, I had a backup plan. If you put a safety net under yourself, you won't be so afraid of the fall, you know? So I looked at my speech therapy license, and I'm like, some girlfriends and I from grad school had talked about starting a private practice together. I'm like, maybe I'll start that on the side and do this and, you know, check out what the job situation is in that sector, make sure all my credentials are still active and I have all my hours. And just having a backup plan made it to where the fear kind of diminished, because I'm like, what's the worst that's going to happen? You know, I sell the bags out of my kitchen again, and then I go work full time or this. So no matter if it's financial stress or it's time constraints, whatever is causing you stress, if you make a backup plan for yourself and think, this is the worst thing that's going to happen, and if I have to go to plan B, I will, but at least I have a plan B. Fear sometimes comes from not having a plan B.
Oh my gosh, yes. And I don't know about you, but like whenever I am in that like fear, I call it fear brain, right? Like the world is falling or the sky is falling, nothing, whatever. My creativity just tanks. Like I cannot show up creatively, which for me, like that is how I can show up and actually produce something in my business is when I can be creative and solve problems. But when I'm in fear brain, I can't. And so it, like you said, for you, it's like having a backup plan. And I think that's a great one for so many people is like, what's the worst thing that could happen? It's not that bad. I'll be okay, and find a way to get out of that and out of that fear brain and into whatever that space is that allows you to contribute. I think is so good. So 2020, it didn't stop at COVID. You had some other like personal stuff happen. I don't know how, we don't need to dig deep into that because I really want to get to what was after that. But like you basically had to completely rebuild, right?
Yes, so, live in Texas and following the end of a marriage, assets are divided. And, then you find yourself in this place where you're like, oh, darn, I've worked my whole life. And then I go through something so huge, which I know a lot of people can relate to that. And then you see what you're left with and you're like, okay, what are we working with here? And sometimes it's not the most desirable outcome, to have to end up in that position. And I knew I loved my company. I wanted my company. I got 100% control of my company. And I said, I have something in my hand here. I don't know how valuable it is, but it's in my little palm and it's mine. And so I was like, hey, I'm just going to try to get back to work. I'm going to make like a loose plan. What do I want to, what are my goals? What do I want to improve upon? How can I continue to generate income with this business and build back some of the assets that I had previously lost? Mm-hmm. So, so that happened at the same time as COVID. So that was cool.
So if any of you think COVID was bad for you, Meredith might have you there. Okay, so you're now at the point where like you own your business, but next to nothing else. Like, so it wasn't like
literally
you could call up someone and be like, "Hey, can I just pay you a bunch of money and you help?" You had to like hustle for this.
Yeah.
So what shifted from like hyper successful business, you're funded, you're all the things, to now you're back to like scrapping it. What did that look like? Like, because I think that's for a lot of people when we talk through like what's the worst that could happen.
Mm-hmm.
That.
That was, you lose your working capital, you lose assets that were valuable that you had in your emergency bank in your brain for, I'm going to use this as capital to get this, you know what I mean? So it was like, we're still, and to this day, I'm still a debt-free, cash-based company. I don't have investors or loans or anything. And I pay my credit cards every month because of points I love to. But I think being back at that place where I knew how to run my business and I knew how to sell my bags, but a lot of that working capital was gone. I think that was so scary. That was when I really dusted off the speech therapy license and stuff, but I started small. And that year, this is kind of a story that I'll share. We were going to a market and we were selling cash and carry, and my sales girls would be like, we're running out each time. Like, we need to take more. We're missing out on all these sales at market. They come in and they go, oh, is this all you have left? Because they'll have sold through the batch that we made the first day of market. And I kept telling my sales girls, we kind of like butted heads over this. I was like, we don't have the capital to make the volume that would appease what you guys want or what the people want. I understand, but I'd rather sell out at market than overmake, and waste that working capital. So basically I made a plan to start, like, I'm going to take 4,000 units to market of cash and carry, sells out. And then we're going to go to August and we're going to take 5,500 and use those profits. And then over probably about a year to year and a half period, my market stashes would be bigger and bigger every time because I was taking all the money I was making from selling out at each market and making a bigger batch next time. So I finally got to where I could comfortably make the inventory I needed. But the answer to your question is I had to start small. I had to do the best I could with what I had. I had to look at my finances and say, how many bags can I afford? Because I front the labor, the materials, just like a boutique owner fronts the inventory costs. So if a store is going through that and she's like, I just have a tiny little baby nest egg to work with right now, start small. Say that you're going to, pull together this tiny grouping of products this month and then take those profits next month. It's better to sell out of something than to be left with surplus, in my opinion. So that was kind of my plan to try to get back on my feet. I didn't take a paycheck for a very long time. I think one month I ran my groceries through the company. I told my accountant, hey, let me know if there's something wrong here, but girls got to eat. And I spent a solid year pretty much not paying myself. So, but my plan worked. It built back. We took the profits from each market, dumped them back in, and kind of built our working capital back up where we can fund ourselves.
Oh my gosh. I love, that's why I wanted you on this, is I think that you're, you hit the nail on the head earlier. When you fall off the horse, you're going to get back on every single time, and that belief in yourself. And it's been fun to see it from the outside and, to have you a part of stuff like Manifest and all of these pieces. So I do want to ask, to kind of shift a little bit away from your story, which I think is so inspiring for people, because you are deeply in the retail world. As you're working with retailers, particularly on the whole side, like, what are you seeing shifting in the market right now? Like, of the retail, especially the ones that are doing well, are there things that you see like these successful retailers having in common that people can learn from to apply to their business, or even from your own business that you're like, yes, if retailers stay focused here, like that's what's going to really lead to their growth?
I definitely, since starting Makeup Junkie and getting into the wholesale sector, I have seen a shift from certain genres of store branching out into other product lines. So if you think about a wholesale market, right, we have Atlanta, we have Dallas, all these markets. They have gift markets and they have apparel markets, because there was clothing boutiques and then there was gift shops. They're merging now. It's a conglomeration. Apparel stores are focusing more on gift items, and I've seen a huge increase in that. We are a gift item, and I just can't tell you how many of our boutiques that used to be solely clothes and maybe just buy a couple of bags here and there are diving headfirst into the gifting items. So That's something I've noticed for sure. I don't know if that's because of the clothing industry, things with the clothing industry, or maybe they're just tired of clothes. I'm not sure, but definitely a significant increase in apparel stores purchasing at gift markets.
Yes. My opinion on that is I think the deeper that a clothing store understands its perfect customer and they know who it is that they're serving and what they're doing for that brand, the more that they're able to like really fully show up and serve them like completely. So it's no longer just like we help them with their cute clothes to wear. Like I think of Ruthie Grace, for example, because we're both friends with Tara. Like if you go into her storefront, she knows her customer so well that yes, like she has the cutest clothes ever because she's Tara and is able to be a brilliant buyer, but then she has candles, she has Bible studies, she has all these different things that speak to her perfect customer, and she has gifty items from scents to bags and all of these things, not just clothes, because she understands her customer and is able to speak to them. So that makes perfect sense to me that we're going to start to see that expansion. And I think that there's like a good way to do that, and then there are bad ways to do that, because if it's from a lack of focus, then that's just like a night and day different story. Okay, so last thing I want to ask, because I've loved this episode. Your story is so inspiring. So Meredith, I have loved this episode. Your story is so inspiring. My last question, if you had like one piece of advice that you would give a retailer, an entrepreneur who's like, hey, I really want to level up in what I do, pulling from all of your story and the things you've learned, what would be that one thing you would share with them? Okay, really focus on this.
I would say you have to challenge yourself, because when you own your company, no one's going to challenge you. You don't have a teacher telling you what your assignment is. You have to challenge yourself. So I kind of made myself a promise that every year I was going to change something big for the better of my product. Like we used to have cloth tags that were all the same color. Now we have leather tags that are all different colors. That's a big glow up for a product like that. And then do something brave every month. Try to get the buyer information for a big store account that you want. Try to connect yourself to somebody that you never in a million years thought would talk to you or show you the time of day. I started emailing the Real Housewives publicists and all these people just on my own and just be like, hi, copy paste. So basically ferociously trying to connect yourself into the pipelines that are going to further your business. And that can be like, but I'll send 20 emails and only get one reply. So did I, but guess what? That one reply got me something really cool. I will try 100 things just to have 99 of them fail. If I can get one thing out of it, I'm fine with it. But I sleep well at night knowing I did something brave and cool and tried to, put myself out there. The digital age, you have social media, you have Instagram, you have Facebook, you have all of those things. You can connect LinkedIn, you can connect yourself to people that in the old days would never speak to you. You never have that opportunity, I had a really cool thing happen to me the other day. We got this email at customer care, and the owner of Buc-ee's Dawn, he was watching Shark Tank. We got an email on our customer care page, and he said, "Hi, I'm trying to find Meredith. This is who I am." And we were like, "Oh, it's probably a scam." He was like, "Can I get her phone number?" And then I was like, "He probably needs it to steal my bank account or something. Like this can't really be him." And we have already sold to their stores before, but he didn't know that because they have 12,000 employees, And so he ended up calling me on his cell phone, and he was like, "Hey," and I was like, "It's really you?" But that was from a rerun from this happened just recently, and that was 5 years ago. I was on that show,
Yes.
So also never make yourself feel like nothing cool can happen to you. If you take the time every month to contact people, share what you do, anyone you want to be connected with, statistics don't lie. That's why I love to play roulette. I play the same numbers over and over again until I strike one that I hit, right? So same concept with marketing. If you do the same thing over and over again and spread it out amongst different people, you're eventually going to hit a number, So I encourage people to put the effort in to try to connect yourself and find those people that will be megaphones for your brand, whether you're a boutique that needs someone to wear their clothing or you're a wholesale brand that needs people to understand what they do.
Yes. I love that. So connecting yourself and really reaching much further than you ever would dream. And something you said that I just want to bring back into the center, because I think it's sometimes I literally wrote it for myself to I need to go back to this personally. Something simple that you said, and I think it sounds so simple that we could gloss over it, is every year you pick a big thing to challenge yourself with.
Yes.
It's so easy to just keep doing what you're doing. And, you might pick a project and it feels hard. But if you really think what would be so challenging for me this year, and we commit to doing that, you could literally be a different person a year from now if you pick that right thing today and you commit and you do it. I love that, Meredith.
Yeah, and I feel like it's funny you say that. I feel like a different person even just from 2 years ago, because the act of trying these things and committing to improve my product. I mean, investing in leather tags for all my bags in 5 colorways was a huge investment for me. But so many compliments. "Oh, I'm so glad it doesn't all have black cloth tags anymore." I mean, that was a huge investment for me, but it's paying back tenfold because people are so pleased with how the product looks now. And also, I think that a couple years ago, I was feeling kind of what your listeners feel like sometimes, where it's like you get in the rut, you want to be here. And it doesn't have to be financially. It can just be with peace of mind or, happy with what you're putting out every day. But I didn't know how to get there. And I just kept doing what I just stated, challenging myself, giving myself assignments and completing them. And then eventually it turned, especially the last year and a half, this beautiful flower started growing out of my bucket of mud. And I'm very proud today of what we have. We are going to do 30% more in sales this year than we have done the last several years, which is phenomenal.
Wow.
And it's dedication, protecting what you've built. I protect it like a child. I don't let people tamper with it. And I'm very proud of it. So I think I answered your question, but I'm not sure.
You absolutely did. Well, Meredith, this has been so good. And for those listening, I hope this has been encouraging for you. So if people want to find you, if it's a retailer and they want to buy wholesale from you, or if they just want to check out what you have going on, where can people find you? We'll drop this stuff in the show notes also. But share where people can find you.
Okay, great. Well, we have wholesale.makeupjunkiebags.com. We are also on Fair. We have a showroom in Dallas that is a Makeup Junkie showroom on the 7th floor, kind of by the men's department. And then we also are in Best of Show in Atlanta. So those are all of the wholesale platforms. And if they just want to check out our products in general or kind of read some jargon about us, you can go to makeupjunkiebags.com.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me. This has been incredible.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Well, hey, everyone. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Hey, thanks for tuning into this episode of the Retail Initiative podcast. If you want more free resources, trainings, downloads, you can get those at madebycapital.com/podcast. Again, that's madebycapital.com/podcast. And for those of you that are serious and really want to take the success that you've built in your brick and mortar storefront and you want to create that same level of success online, I invite you to schedule a free call with me, at madebycapital.com/schedule, where we'll dig into your business, like where things are now, where you're wanting to go, getting really clear on your goals, and what are the 2 or 3 things that might be standing in the way of getting there. Now, look, if we're a good fit, I'd love to share what that looks like. And if not, my hope is that you leave with clarity on where to focus for you to reach your goals. So again, thanks for tuning in. And as always, leave a review, make sure you're subscribed, and I cannot wait to see you next time.